Greetings, Facebook family. It is a gift to be present with you all. My name is Reverend Kendra Frazier, and I am so excited to join with Nurturing Justice's founder, Chris Watson. I'm going to turn it over to Chris so she can welcome you further, and then we will get started. We're so glad to see you all. Chris, it's
Good
yours.
evening, everybody. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm glad that you all are tuning in. I was just informed that Mercury is retrograde, so we've been having some technical difficulties, but we are here with you now and hoping that you are tuned in to this really interesting panel discussion. We are really grateful that Kendra Frazier, Reverend Kendra Frazier, is joining us to lead this incredible discussion for us this evening. Kendra Frazier was recognized by the Root 100 as one of the influential African Americans in 2020 for breaking down barriers and paving for future generations in the field of mental illness. She is a licensed master social worker and a Baptist clergy woman. Kendra served associate pastor at First Corinthian Baptist Church as the associate pastor for congregational care and wellness. She's the founding executive director of the Hope Center in Harlem, and she worked in that job from 2016 to 2020. During her tenure there, she was awarded American Psychiatric Association's Achievement Award for Innovative Mental Health Field. Kendra is currently the founder and CEO of Kind Consulting, a mental health and wellness boutique that supports individuals, couples, and organizations in thriving through therapeutic services, spiritual coaching, and trauma-informed trainings. Kendra has been featured in multiple print and digital media publications, including Vice Magazine, New York Times. So a Master of Divinity degree from Candler School of Theology, at Emory University, a Master of Social Work from Columbia University, and a Bachelor of Science in Business Management from North Carolina A&T State University. So it is our pleasure to welcome Kendra, who is a board member of Nurturing Justice, a dear friend of mine, somebody who I admire greatly, and I'm just grateful that she's here. Kendra, while you introduce our panelists, who are all, people that I admire and hold close, I'm going to mute my camera, and I'm going to start inviting people through this Zoom platform to come in.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Chris, for inviting me to facilitate this wonderful panel. We have four incredible women that I am so excited to introduce to all of you who are looking on, and some of you are going to catch the recording later. First, I want to start with Lucinda Canty. Lucinda is a mother, a midwife, a researcher, nurse educator, historian, a reproductive health justice activist, artist, and poet. She is deeply committed to improving the maternal health of Black women and other women of color. She has 27 years of experience in providing midwifery care. She exists in many lanes of nursing to improve health outcomes for women of color. Her experience as a clinician, research, and educator fuels her desire to address racism in nursing, midwifery, and the healthcare system. The goal of Lucinda's anti-racism activism is to create change in practice, education, research, and policy. She advocates for women of color to have the resources and support they need to maintain their health and wellness. She has presented her research at various conferences and organizations. Thank you so much for being here, Lucinda. Next up is Erin Livensparger. And Erin, please forgive me for mispronouncing your last name. How do I pronounce your last name?
Livensparger. I'm alive.
Livensparger. Thank you so much. Erin is the co-owner of Fire Ring Farm. She is a biologist and educator with a passion for social justice. For her, social justice means reducing food apartheid, creating shared natural spaces, and working tirelessly to positively influence our world. Erin grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and attended Oberlin College, where she met her husband, Jeremy. She graduated in 2001 with a degree in biology. and went on to work in reproductive health care for 20 years. She worked with Planned Parenthood of Southern New England and Health Imperatives of Southeastern Massachusetts. Fire Ring Farm began after a move to Connecticut in 2004. To aid her work in Fire Ring Farm, Erin is a certified herbalist under Rosemary Gladstar's The Science of Art and Herbalism course. She is also a Reiki master and a reflexologist. She brings all these practices into the educational programming and community events at Fire Ring Farm. Erin also works as the director of the Wild Gifting Project, a nonprofit foundation designed to deliver grants to foster unique charitable projects. The Wild Gifting Project's mission is broad because they hope to foster grace and generosity in a variety of ways. Thank you so much for being here, Erin. Next up is Tasha Blanco. Tasha is a New Englander residing in Virginia. She has over 21 years of experience, has held various leadership roles within reproductive health and grassroots organizations. Throughout her career, she has served as a director of equity and organizational effectiveness, clinical manager, facilitator, and executive director with both small and large nonprofit organizations. Through her work as a consultant, Tasha has developed, designed, and delivered offerings for reproductive and social justice, organizations focusing on expanding access to care and developing vital connections to community resources. In 2023, she joined the senior leadership team of the Black Girl Health Collective as head of offerings and partnerships. Tasha's passion for reproductive health, advocacy, and justice is the foundation and driver for her desire to confront, educate, and dismantle systems of oppression. Community is her lifeblood. Influence from her own personal experiences and also familial ties of advocating against racial inequities, she unrelentingly commits to this critical work. And last but not least is my beloved sister, Kaylin Frazier. Kaylin is the founder of Good Food Made Better. She's also the founding member of Suway International Resources, a faith-based nonprofit, and also the COO at Easy Moves Carrier. She holds a degree in complementary alternative medicine with a focus in plant medicine. She continues to sit at the feet of elders and spiritual practitioners and is adamant about living a life in alignment with her beliefs. This has contributed greatly to her spiritual sensibility, keen entrepreneurial spirit, and deep understanding of the human experience as a life alignment coach, energy worker. Kaylin creates a space where people can be heard, then offers tools that can assist in accessing clarity, ease, joy. Inspiring clients to embrace positive change and spiritual growth, as a ceremonialist, Kaylin creates sacred experiences for participants to connect with the transformative power of indigenous plant medicine, herbs, and practices. It looks like we have everybody here. I want to welcome Lauren on, who is a onlooker to our conversation. I want to start with why you all said yes to reproductive justice. Why did you say yes to this sacred work? And anyone can kick us off.
Okay, I mean, I'll start. So for me, just years of practicing as a midwife, you see the injustices, but I didn't know how to name it. It wasn't until I started to learn more about it. But one thing I realized was that things don't have to be the way they are. And there's so much that people try to think that we can't change things. And I also start to learn my history because you know how you hear bits and pieces in school. But when I really start to understand what it meant to be Black in America, what it meant to be a Black female in America, that's when I really start to realize we can't be doing the same thing that's been happening since slavery. Things have to change. So that's my motivation. I do it for people who are younger, people who are older. It's just that I feel like there's so many challenges we already have in life. This is one thing that we shouldn't have to be trying to fight for. So that's my kind of motivating factor.
Thank you so much.
I know for me, I am new to advocacy and activism around reproductive justice and Black maternal health. 7 months ago, I had a daughter, and although I've been aware of the challenges that we face as women and birthing women and Black mamas, it's different when you are face to face with these issues, right? And how I had to stand so firmly in my own body sovereignty, and how I had to trust my body's intelligence as I interacted with these systems, really gave me the fire to do this work, because it's necessary. And if people are going through more than what I experienced, then I know I have to be a voice in this work to help another woman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylin. I would lastly just say for myself, it definitely, the passion started not only from coming from a family of activism and advocacy, but really my own personal experience as being somebody who culturally folks didn't believe should have had a child at the age that I did become a mother, which was at 14. My personal experience with the healthcare system, with other systems of how a young Black teen had become pregnant, and in a ways where they felt that that wasn't something that should have happened, also created other oppressive systems that were connecting to kind of like, well, what was your mom doing? And so I think from the healthcare to other systems, it just became a motivator for me, where I just knew that what I was experiencing was something that I shouldn't be experiencing, because there was a lack of care. And I said that whenever I was in my space planted in the world, my purpose would be that someone like myself would not have to experience that again.
Wow. Thank you, Tasha.
Yeah, my journey into sexuality education and then reproductive justice goes back to my mother. She was a home economics teacher, and then in Columbus, Ohio, taught parent teen laws, and was one of the only educators for that in the whole city at the time, in the 80s. And I would come home from school and she'd be like proof watching VHS sperm meets egg videos, and like, getting ready for class, and I could ask her questions, and we became the house where my friends then came and were able to talk to her. So when I look back my roots and sort of saying, this is okay to talk about, and sort of always been the person that was bringing up, reproduction, sexuality, healthy relationships, gender, and sort of raising my head up and seeing that was a privilege I had in my home, and how do we provide access to everyone else, and that wasn't the same for everyone. And then coming into being an educator for Planned Parenthood, for family planning clinics, just right in my face the disparity that was out there. And so how can I use who I am in the world and my privilege to advocate and center voices that don't get raised up in that way. So yeah, I'll stop there with sort of how I got started.
No, that's
it's a great question.
That's perfect. Thank you all for giving us an entry point to why you all have said yes. As you all have spoken, I'm thinking about in a former life serving as chaplain in a level 1 trauma center in Atlanta, and sitting with women who had miscarriages or who recently had abortions, who were making meaning about what they had experienced based on their spirituality or religious beliefs. So I'm wondering, for you all, being people, some of you are, I know, Kaylin, you are just entering into this activism, but you also have the gift and knowingness of spirituality, and you all do in your own particular ways. What are some of the things that you all have been confronted by with women that you all have journeyed with, who are experiencing entering into the healthcare system? And I'm wondering the things that you all have heard about how their spiritual beliefs inform some of the ways that they're thinking about themselves and their bodies.
Well, that's a good question. And I think that our healthcare system doesn't always acknowledge that. And that's always been an issue for me. You know, my parents are from the South, and everything, spirituality was something that was so important. When things happen, good or bad, we always considered that, but it was always something to help us get through. And what I'm learning in the healthcare system is that is missing. So if someone does have a loss, and that's where they turn to help guide them through. But if they have a system that doesn't want to acknowledge that, that focuses only on the physical, that piece gets left out. And a lot of times they don't know who to talk to. So I
Mhm.
find people who are struggling, like you mentioned, loss. And I spoke to someone who she was like, she had a miscarriage. And she said, I had to ask myself, why did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? And, and someone said, if God, why did God let me get pregnant for me to
Mm,
lose it? But it
mm,
took a process of her talking and learning about herself and other pieces of life and allowing herself to heal. Because the thing is, if it's not addressed, they'll put that blame on themselves and feel like they get stuck there. So I just say for myself, I realize that with anyone coming in, and everybody is different in how that shows up, but letting them have the space to talk about it. And I find that at least just acknowledging it makes things real for them. So that's something I'm very intentional about when I encounter anyone who's coming in for care.
mm. Thank you for that, Lucinda. Acknowledging it, not dismissing it, not ignoring it is one way to hold space and allow people to be, is what I'm hearing. I'd love to hear from anyone else who has some insight on this.
One thing that's coming up for me, as far as how spirituality or people's spiritual religious beliefs can impact how they interact with the healthcare system, I remember the word that's coming up for me is shame, and how religious belief is often paired with shame around how a woman sees her body, what a woman does with her body, and then how even further how she sees having a child, whether that's out of wedlock or whether that's too young, so on and so forth. And so for me, being a young woman that started becoming sexually active like around 15, 16, shame was a huge part of my experience because of my religious beliefs.
Mm. So what I hear you saying, Kay, is a lot of toxic theological beliefs that
Mhm.
inform that shame when it comes to, I'm thinking about, because we grew up in the same household, when you talk about the flesh being separate
Yes.
from the spirit and how the flesh is wicked or wretched and how you need to control it through various spiritual practices are some of the things that I'm thinking of when you mentioned that. Aaron and Tasha, I saw you both shaking your heads when Caleb mentioned the word shame. I'd love to hear from you all.
Yeah, thank you for that. It was literally a word I wrote down, when the question was asked, and then I just wrote down now is disconnect. And so thinking back to my family's spiritual path, or I might say more religious path, and seeing early on at a young age the disconnect, like who was in, who was out, so who was baptized, who wasn't. And as a person, as a family that made the choice to say, my mom and dad said my brother and I would be baptized if we wanted, so we were not. And in Bible school and Sunday school, being told to stand up because we weren't baptized and have everyone look at us and pray for us. Like there was this disconnect in who was in, who was out early on. And we were raised in a Methodist faith at the time. And then now fast forward to the many, many, many patients, people that can get pregnant, women, all folks in my reproductive health career, and just feel like it's a secret. Like they kind of whisper and they go like this. So the shame, the disconnect, it's almost like I'm in some sort of confession that others haven't heard. And then to Lucinda's point, like normalizing it and it's okay here. And just the like, oh, like the body side being so big, and then knowing in the healthcare system you only have seconds with them and be like, oh, I just saw a thing and now you have to move on. Like it still isn't enough release. It still isn't enough holding and care. Yeah, a disconnect, shame, and being able to witness it, and then also wanting to do more.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to also just add really quickly, in thinking about in my career and delivering access to abortion care, and thinking about not just the shame, but like the guilt, the stigma, and the complexity of when a woman is facing a decision about becoming a parent or not. And the complexity of whatever their religion is just having the ability to have that conversation. And because they may not feel like they can have that conversation with their religious leader. And so one of the things that being just like a best space for people to have that conversation, but then also creating, I love that there's other resources, right? So connecting people to RCRC, which is an organization that helps around Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, that they could actually talk to somebody in their faith-based spirituality to actually have those conversations if they can't go to their pastor. I think that that's an important piece. I think individuals holistically have mass complexities to them. And so having that ability to that they are feeling heard in that space when they are making a choice around their bodies, having a conversation around miscarriages can be super hard and guilt-ridden, and all the things that you all have already said.
Absolutely. Can you repeat that organization that you stated again? And whoever is on the live chat, I see about 9 people on, please put that in the chat so people can have that in the comments, Tasha.
I appreciate it. It looks like Erin dropped it already. Thank you so much, Erin. It is RCRC, which is Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice.
Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. Those of you on Facebook, please write that in the chat on Facebook, because people are going to come back to this as a resource. As you all are speaking, I'm thinking about pathways to liberating our bodies, just as a theme that's coming up. And what I hear you all talking about is a roadmap to free ourselves from the stigmas that we've internalized based on religiosity and toxic theology. What are some of the pathways that you all have went down to free yourselves to engage in activism work around reproductive justice? Because I know people are looking on this, and some people are going to be struggling right now. Somebody may have just supported a friend who experienced a miscarriage or decided not to have a child, and they are looking for pathways to liberate themselves and their bodies. What are some of the things that have worked for you all, and for those that you work with and companion with?
I feel like I'm always starting. Is that okay?
Oh, no, it's fine. Just jump in here.
No, because this has always been something that has been tough. And again, just for myself too, I want people to understand I'm not excluding myself, because we all go through kind of growing up and, hearing different messages, not seeing ourselves in the media, not seeing ourselves in the classroom. We a lot of times we internalize things, and we don't feel like we have that space where we can talk about what we're going through. And I think that part of this is designed by society for us to just not feel good about who we are. And so one thing that I have been very intentional about is that this is who I am right now, and I have to love who I am. And not everybody's going to agree with my hair, my weight. But one thing is I have to stay true to myself, because I felt like if I don't love myself, nobody else is going to love me. And it's challenging at times, but as I feel like when I stay true to myself, whatever happens to me in life, whether I try something, it doesn't work, as long as I did it my way, I could feel good about it. If someone tells me this is how you're supposed to do it, this is how you're supposed to think, even tell me how to take care of my body, and it's not something I feel comfortable with, but I still do it because they said it. When things don't work out, I, I feel like there's even a heavier burden on me. And I can't escape that. Like, oh, I should have spoke up, but I didn't. And what I feel is that to understand how we feel ourselves is real. We have days we wake up, we don't feel good. I feel bloated. I feel this or that. I don't feel pretty. And we have to acknowledge that feeling, but think about why. And then have that honest conversation with yourself. It's
Mhm.
not easy and inflicts pain, but sometimes I think you have to feel that pain to heal. But you have to uncover it. I feel like, and I'll just wrap up because I don't want to take up too much space, but I feel like we just keep covering things up and then eventually it catches up with us. So I feel right now, especially if you have someone that you can talk to, someone that you can trust, and sometimes you try somebody out and they're not there for you. You know, they don't show up like you expect them to show up and they disappoint you, and that's okay, but it just lets you know I got to move on to someone else. So I just want to leave that we have to have spaces where, again, where we could talk, but it's okay to feel what we're feeling and acknowledge that, because that's the only way that we can move forward and develop to who we want to be.
Hmm. Oh, that's good, Lucinda, removing the layers of covering. Ooh, you freeing some people. I see heads nodding in these squares.
It's bringing so many like thoughts to my mind, and I'm going back, my mind is going back to the slave trade and the things that happen to us on a mental and spiritual level, the ways that we had to abandon our innate ways of being in order to survive, right?
Good.
And that for me is how I have the keeping that in my mind is how I continue to liberate my body, because I recognize that I have collected stories and narratives and experiences that some belong to me and some don't, right? And there is a system that has been created around these ways that limit us, really by the European imagination of
Mm.
what our bodies can do, should be doing, all of that. Me, wisdom is what liberates me.
Mhm.
Caitlin, you done said some words, dropped some
Absolutely.
jewels. I would say when you asked that question, Kendra, and I was just thinking about, you know, forever, our Black bodies have been tortured. They have been exploited, especially us as Black women, experimented on, all of the things that we carry in the stories, as you were saying, of history that we have to unlearn. So for myself, it's unlearning, but recognizing and being aware of that is why of the mistrust of systems that were created to really not support anybody, but especially BIPOC folks. So I just want to say that. And so for the liberation for myself, it's been kind of reckoning that evil history, especially as stereotypes, things that have been said about us, us women, flipping that out, Lucy and all of our ancestors, but really learning and unlearning, and then saying, it is okay to be me, to be authentically myself. When I'm going to the doctors, how do I do that? How do I consider myself to be in spaces like this where it brings me joy in such a dark, dark world that we live in? So I appreciate you for just dropping those jewels in there, because I felt that in my body. So I just think.
Hmm. Absolutely. Chris is saying in the chat, and I want to honor her words, that the church systems, the synagogues, the mosque joined the other world systems to suppress us. Because this is just not a Christian thing. When we talk about the spirituality of reproductive justice, we are talking about the Abrahamic religions as well as all other spiritual practices that oppress women trusting themselves and their bodies. That's one of the things that I keyed in on when you all were talking about mistrust. Oftentimes, and I learned this through being able to journey with Kaylin through her pregnancy and going in and out of appointments within the healthcare system. How do physicians and people in the traditional healthcare world make women not trust themselves when it comes to how their bodies might be showing up, as well as what they might need? Because what I've learned just through my small ways of journeying is that sometimes women know better than the doctors. So I'll let one of you all have that.
Yes. I have to, should I start off again or
Go,
does someone
go kick
want
us
to start?
off.
And we take ourselves
Well,
off mute, so it can just be
yeah,
good.
so that's one of the biggest pieces to why Black women are dying. That's
Mhm.
one of the reasons why when someone is even going through a miscarriage, a lot of times they'll call and they'll say, oh, that's cramping, that's normal, it's normal to spot. And any bleeding should be examined.
Yeah.
So that's something that that our healthcare system does. But the thing is, it doesn't do it to everyone. It does it to us. It does it to Black women. And I think that it creates this gaslighting that I see, that something is wrong. Like there was a woman who reached out to me. She wasn't feeling well. She called her doctor. She was pregnant. She was like 8.5 months pregnant. And her doctor said, oh, no, the person, I don't even think it was a doctor. It was maybe a nurse said, just rest. You have an appointment in 2 days. And she was like, she knew she didn't feel right, but she trusted that they were giving her the best advice.
Wow.
2 days later, went in for her visit, blood pressure through the roof. They would not even let her physically walk out of the building. She had to take an ambulance to get to the hospital from the doctor's office. So I say that sometimes it's like we know something's wrong in our bodies, but we just keep hearing people say, are you sure? Or they minimize us, or they make it seem like we're complaining all the time. And we really have to cut that out. And I just want to I'll share just really quickly a story. I had a young lady come in who was on the birth control shot. She at least got 3 shots, but she said, I feel something moving in my body. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, she can't be pregnant. She's been on the shot. I was this close to giving her the shot and sending her on the way. But I said, you know what? Let's just do a urine pregnancy test. I sent her to the bathroom and then I had her come back and I said, just check her stomach. I started to check her abdomen. I felt the baby kicking me. And for me, that was a lesson learned because we know and understand our bodies. Sometimes we may not be able to interpret what's happening, but we know when something is wrong. And we have to, I just said to myself, I just took 5 minutes to check her. And she left out of here knowing that she was definitely pregnant. I could have gave her shot and sent her on her way. So I just want to say that not listening is what causes harm to those that we care for.
Yes. Yes. I love that you ended with that, Lucinda. Not listening is what causes harm to those that we care for, because my experience, I believe I was 6 months pregnant and I had a crazy day. Nothing went right. And I had one doctor's appointment. I missed that one. I rescheduled for the same day to get my check. I got there, my blood pressure through the roof. I know that I had a crazy day. They wanted to triage me and told me that if best case scenario, if my pressure didn't go down, they would probably have to induce me. They didn't know that I also had 2 midwives on my care team and a doula, right? And so for me, it was this care that I felt like I needed in order to have a full spectrum of care, right? And so I called my midwives. I'm like, look, I know what is happening in my body. I've never had high blood pressure throughout my pregnancy. They didn't take a time to look at my chart. They didn't take time to say, hey, like just relax. Like, what can we do to make you comfortable? Nothing. Instead, I was seen as a person that was honestly being negligent because I was choosing to trust my body and not their books, not their statistics, right? And so I left. I called my sister. I'm like, I need you to pick me up right now. I didn't have my car. I didn't have my cell phone that day. I used a nurse cell phone. I got in her car and I just left. And my midwives instructed me, hey, go home, take a bath, eat something good that feels good to you, dance if you need to, like put your feet in the grass and take your blood pressure every 30 minutes, but don't take it enough to where it's stressing you out. Take it enough so that you have documentation that this is not your normal. And I did that. And I am just so blessed that I had the opportunity to lean into my body's intelligence and what I knew was right for my body, and that I didn't allow somebody else's opinion of my experience to impact my pregnancy. Because I could have been induced, because whose pressure can go down in that environment?
Yeah. Oof. So much wisdom being shared here. Slow down. Take the time to listen. Take the
Yeah.
time to listen to the wisdom of your body. Take the time to honor what your intuition is telling you.
Mhm.
Take the time to save yourself. Thank you for that. I love to hear from Tasha and Aaron.
Yeah, I'll share. Yeah, I have the privilege to learn some of the things you're talking about, and realize that I was being listened to and supported to have my children at home with a midwife, with doulas present, with my family around me, and others just aren't trusted in that way. And so to experience some of the health struggles that I've had personally, and to have that be supported in that way, and then to go to work the next day and see that wasn't available to my Black and brown, marginalized coworkers, friends, community, is huge, and so to see those benefits in the advocacy I've had to do. What is a doula? What is a midwife? Explaining that, why am I choosing to do X, Y, and Z with my own body? And then to know that it's so much worse, so much bigger disparity for others. And so I just want to honor the journey. Tasha's saying this is happening for everyone, and it is not happening in the same way for everyone. And so I just want to name that from that perspective. And Kendra, I don't even remember your initial question, but just want to name that, and thank you all for the stories and the care that you're giving. Yeah, it's just not the same. White folks, it's not the same.
We're talking about trusting our bodies. And I think everything that you have said, Aaron, along with Lucinda and Kaylin, is important, that these systems aren't thinking about, particularly the bodies of African descendant women and brown women and women of color, in the ways that they are thinking about women who have white skin. It is much different, as you've named, Aaron. Tasha, I'd love to hear from you.
I'm gonna let Lucinda actually follow up for what she wanted to do, and then we can circle back. But I'm okay at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be quick. Because Kaylin brought up something so important, is that there's nothing wrong with us, that we're normal, healthy beings, but sometimes the system is set up to instill that fear. Because if you would have went to that hospital, you would have delivered that baby prematurely, then there's a baby in the NICU, and then you getting back home and taking care of yourself. There's so much. So I just want to say that when we feel like things are right, we could get people in our head and make us think that something is wrong, or something is wrong with us. And I think we have to resist that, because I think our healthcare system is just set up to treat everything like a disease. And we're not a disease, we're not a pathology.
Yeah.
And there was a young lady recently that I work with, who went in she had a normal pregnancy, 36 weeks. And then she went in for a visit just for an ultrasound to check a fibroid. But they were like, oh, I see this going on with the baby. Oh, your placenta. And then they were like, we're going to have to induce you in a week or two. And she was like, induce me? She's like, but I feel fine. I feel my baby moving. Things are good. And so we looked at her ultrasound report together. There was nothing that said she had to be induced at 38 weeks. And they had her so stressed out. And so I said, take time, focus on yourself. Think about what it is that you're feeling and trust your body. She resisted them until 42 weeks only. And I said, you're in control. I said, if you're ready, then you're ready. And I said that you could go in now and it's not an emergency and you still have control over the scene. And that's what she did. But it's just that from 36 weeks to 42 weeks, every visit, oh, we got the heartbeat had a dip. The heartbeat did this. They signed her out AMA because they were like, the heartbeat had a dip and we're worried about that. But she's like, but my baby's moving good. But anyways, it's just that stress that they put on us, that even if our blood pressure is good, this pressure is going to make us not feel right. And I had to tell her to, what Erin, you were talking about earlier, detach. I said, you have to detach from that because I already put it in her head. We couldn't erase it. So I said, what can you do to keep your mind off of that? So I just say that's the other piece. But just, I want everyone to know that Black people, we're not a disease. Is what you're doing to us. You want us to be better? Leave us alone. Stop stressing us. Leave us alone.
And just to add something really quickly, Lucinda, you just inspired this, but I do feel like the medical system treats the body, but do not honor the body. And it's in honoring the body that we find this experience of the spirituality of reproductive health, you know?
I am looking down because I am trying to type and what you all are saying into this Facebook stream because it's so powerful. So if you see me looking down for the ones, and that's why I am loving what you all are offering in terms of wisdom and what it means to trust ourselves as Black women particularly and women in general. Trust our intuition and our knowingness because we all have been made in the image and likeness of this expansive intelligence that lives within us. And so it's important to ground ourselves in that knowingness and reality. When we think of the title, the spirituality of reproductive justice, what's so spiritual about reproductive justice? What is so sacred about reproductive justice? Caitlin, I'd love for you to kick us off because I know you have some thoughts about the spirituality of reproductive.
I've been really just contemplating it since we started talking about doing this Zoom, and it didn't really like come together for me until I recently posted on Instagram, and it was the first time that I shared about my pregnancy. And in my post, I noted that it is within the trust that unfolds within the experience of pregnancy that births this sovereignty within a woman that no system or no man can lay hands on. And it's a combination of like this deep knowing, this connection and experience that you have with something that you can't see but you know exists. It's the heartbeat, it's the breath, and it is honoring these things and protecting it, protecting the experience, protecting the sacredness, protecting the unseen. It's the protection of it all for me that is the spirituality, and the honoring of it all that is the spirituality of reproductive justice. And again, these things are still unfolding for me because I am new to this, to the advocacy and the activism, but that's where I am currently in my experience. Is this the honoring and protecting of the body and the baby that is the spirituality of reproductive justice.
I love that.
Kaylin, my confession or my disclosure is I was journaling before getting on here, and what were some of my thoughts, and it was to a different question, but I wrote the protector protecting the giver of life. Like, so you're talking about this, like, what does it mean when we think of family role, community role, difference, us, them? Like, what does it mean to protect the life giver, to protect that force? And then people heard in my bio that I have a deep connection to land and earth and farming and growing. And one of our philosophies on our farm is about nourishing the soil, not just extracting from it, but giving back to it. What plants grow together? The tomato plant puts stuff in the soil to help the basil grow. Sometimes it needs a break. Sometimes you grow nothing there and you just cover it with cover crop blanket. Like, so Mother Earth, the soul, the protection, and what's happening in our world right now, where we're just extracting, harming, raping, abusing, like, and again, in different parts of the earth, just like different groups of people are feeling it more than others. And the whole system is harmed, and the whole system is in pain right now. And the whole system, when you say like how to get in touch with your body, it's like, how do you get back to that connection to the earth? And it's that protection of the things that give us life. And why are we so afraid of it? And why do we harm it instead of protecting it? So I feel very seen by your words, and just wanted to offer that back when I think of the spirituality, the sacredness, and protecting the whole relationship. You know, that doesn't leave men out. That doesn't leave, you know, non-binary folks out. That does that. It's the whole system is life-giving, and we all have our role to play. And just acknowledging that, you know, anyone with a uterus can become pregnant, and how do we protect and honor and serve all of that. So I love that question. And Kaylin, thank you for kicking it off.
Thank you, Erin. And I was just wanting to add too, I think like spirituality and connectiveness, and that means spirituality means so much in a complex way, differently to folks, depending on how do you practice. What are the things that are most important to you and whoever you are connected to within this universe? And thinking about that, and thinking about reproductive justice and the framework that amazing BIPOC women and trans people have created for us to be able to make the decisions that are best for us as either parenting, how we can raise them in a safe environment, how they're looking to do that, and much more. But as I think about that, I think about how that may mean for some of us to unlearn some of the things that spirituality has done to harm us in ways that are not helpful, and in communities that it's not helpful. I think that it's super important for us to recognize that, be aware of that, and be a part of, if we're doing reproductive justice, dismantling that at its core. And I think if you have the faith leaders that you may be leaning into, if they are a part of that, that makes it the transition a lot easier to do the work. But I just feel like that's one of the important things, is how do you unlearn some of the things that are not helpful, but have helped you to this point, but are not helpful as we think about reproductive justice in the larger scale.
Yes. And I was reflecting on this question a lot when we started even just talking about having this session. And I started thinking about history and thinking that for the Black female body, never really had control over the body the moments our feet hit this land. We never had control, like anybody had access to our bodies. And I think about spirituality in a sense that it helped them through that time. It gave them strength, because and I think of I found out that my great grandmother, I just found this out last year, my great grandmother was born enslaved. And my mother said how she was, could not get married. She had to have the master's children. She was pregnant 20 times and only 12 of them survived. And I thought about that, even when my mother told me, she never talked about this. And when she told me, it really hit me. But then it started to have me think about who was there for her to help her through. And I know that she had to depend on her beliefs, her spirituality to help her through. And so I look at what that means for us today. And I'm like, still, people think that anyone can have access to our bodies, but that's not true. And for me, is using that to give me strength, using that to give me peace, and knowing that when I say no, I have the right to say no, and feeling good with that decision. That's where my spirituality comes in, because I feel good about myself instead of giving in and saying, okay, you can do whatever you want. And that could be whether I'm in a relationship or whether I'm going to the provider. If you're not going to treat me right, like I had someone recently, if you're not going to treat me right, you're not sticking a needle in my arm to draw my blood. I'd rather not have it done today. But it was taking back that strength, taking back that power. And so that's where I feel like it really lands. So I think that we have to be able to tap into that, because I feel like that spirituality does guide us. We just have to be open to it and allow, again, it goes back to us trusting how we're feeling in our bodies.
This is rich. This is so rich. I am excited to be witness to this wisdom that's in the space. We have about 4 questions in the live feed on Facebook. So I want to start all the way in Chicago, Illinois. My good friend Natasha Robinson is asking this question: how do we receive quality medical care and treatment from those who may not recognize the humanity and divinity in Black women? How do we receive quality medical care and treatment from those who may not recognize the humanity and divinity in Black women?
Yeah. Tasha,
Gotcha.
I'm gonna jump in and try it on. I think that's an amazing question, and I pause because I think about there's a lot of factors. So and the factors are depending on, do you have insurance? Do you not have insurance? Where do you live? How do you get to access the care depending on geographically where you're at? I think for myself, I just moved from Connecticut to Virginia and trying to find a provider, because I have my list of things like, I want that person to be a Black woman. I've kind of chucked it down like, well, if she's not a Black woman, then maybe it's a person of color is something that I'm willing to kind of take a step back from. But recognizing that I have the privilege of having insurance. Now, does my insurance get me the provider that I would like, that is actually getting through to that place, and then actually having the conversation? And some of us have already talked through about vetting your providers, right? I think the more you think about it, it becomes overwhelming and frustrating, because that person may check off all those boxes, and then you get into a space and they do nothing to provide the support that you need with maintaining your health. So all of those things, it's maddening. And because the system was not created to actually do the things that we're looking and wanting it to do. So I say that to say that what an amazing question. I think going in thinking about all of those things, but also leaning into your networks, right? Your friends, finding out about that provider. Oh, so-and-so is a great provider, and this is the reason why. Doing your own research. I know that at Black Girl Health Collective, what we are managing to want to do is to create these resources and networks so that we can connect people to the providers, to the resources that they don't even know exist, and what they need. And so I think with all of what I said, I hope that there was a thread that you could connect to that kind of said how that could be potentially possible in the world that we're currently in.
Excellent. I want to go to Queens, New York, and take it to Pastor Ruby Wilson. She asked this question: the role of clergy can be and has been harmful. In what ways can clergy work to unpack the harm? In what ways can clergy work to unpack the harm? Tasha, I saw that reaction. I don't know if this is okay.
I'm gonna pass it to Lucinda because I'm percolating over here, but I
got you.
Beautiful
Yes,
folks
I
out here.
think that how they can unpack is, first of all, they have to examine their own assumptions. They have to check their knowledge about our history in this country, because some people are very blind to it. So I think that they have to educate themselves. I think that's really the start, but the reflection, because this system is set up that any one of us could become a part of it. But if you're aware, you're going to see those things and say, oh, I'm not going to provide care that way. And so I think that's where it starts. And I just also just want to say quickly about having that provider. For any provider that cares for a Black woman should be honored. that we're taking the time to allow them to examine us, to hear our issues and our concerns. So I think that it's so important that when you go in, I used to go in and wonder, okay, who am I going to have? What's going to happen? Now I go in, I have my list. These are things I'm going to have taken care of. If you can't take care of it, and I let them know this, if you can't take care of it, I'm going somewhere else. But I want them to know that I can see that, because health disparities show us that they know how to treat people the right way. They're just not treating us the right way. So anyways, it's just going in and kind of like taking control over that, not waiting to see how they're going to treat you. Set the scene right away. This is why I'm here. This is what I need. And I just want to say start there. But still back to that question, again, because I think we go through life and we don't think about why things happen, and we think that things can't change, but reflect and evaluate. And I just even think about, if you're in that person's shoes, and they're coming into you for advice, do you want them to tell you things based on lies or not knowing a history and not knowing who you are? And I'm talking about that clergy person, because I want them to just be open and be open to learn and to listen as well.
It's good. Yeah. Is this anyone else's question? I have a question. So there are women who are going to be looking at this. They are pregnant right now. They're on the line debating whether they're going to have their baby in a hospital, or whether they want to use a doula, or whether they want to use midwives. Can you all speak to some of the myths that you hear around people who are tapping into alternative ways to birth their babies into the world, whether that's using a doula or using midwives? I'd love for anyone to speak to that.
You want to go, Kaylin? You unmuted first.
Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I could just share all the things I was called. I mean, I've already shared that I had my children at home, and I'm a doula, and I'll also share that I've experienced many different outcomes of pregnancies, and so and held space for so many folks that have. I feel like it's important to name that about 1 in 3 pregnant people will experience an abortion or a termination. Many more experience a miscarriage or a loss. And then, kind of to your point of thinking about pregnancy options, you can be a parent, you can be a single parent, relationship parent, parenting in a community. So there's choices in that. Whether you give birth at home, then it's in the water. Is it in a tub? Is it with a, do you have doulas there? Do you have a relationship with your family to want them there? During COVID, then no one was allowed to be there. Like there's these, yes, I may make decisions about my body and have a plan. And then also the plan goes in different directions. And when do I give my consent about those changes to the plan? But as somebody who shared with folks, I didn't want to know, the gender or the sex, whatever terms we want to use for what the baby was, that confused family members and why, and wanting to have the baby at home. And what happens if there's an emergency? You're irresponsible. You're not safe. And then hearing nursing or not nursing, formula or not, oh, you feed your baby formula, that's not safe. Oh, you're whipping your breast out in public. Who are you? Like, there's just the shame, back to Kaylin's initial point, kind of whatever somebody chooses. So that's what I love, the offerings here of finding that way to ground and say, this is what I'm going to try, and this is what I'm going to do. And you can decide even what you share of that story, and so it's saying, don't touch my belly when I'm walking in the grocery store. And I can say, yep, I've had an abortion, or yep, I've had a home birth, or I have a baby. You get to, not only control who touches you, draws your blood, but how you tell that story. And that's all part of the messages you hear. So some people want the support on the Facebook groups and the mommy and me things. Other people, there's shame on social media. So we're sort of protecting ourselves and our families all the time. So kind of stop there, but oh yeah, you're called all sorts of things no matter what you decide to do.
That's so true. I got so much backlash from my family when I originally announced that I was going to be birthing my child at home. Irresponsible, negligent, just a lot of fear, so much fear. And one of the things that I had to continue to tell myself is that my birthing story is my story. And I am actively creating my story as I grow this baby in my belly. Right. And so I was given books to read and links and this and that. And I didn't read any of it because our bodies are going to do what they need to do. And we have to trust that God made no mistakes. And in that trusting in our bodies and in creating our story, that's where we find our strength in trusting that we're making the right decision, whether that's at a birthing center, at home, or at the hospital, And so I would just offer to any mothers or women who are deciding to get pregnant, just wherever you are in your journey, create your own story and don't get too attached to the narratives that already exist, even the books, the what to expect when you're just be in your experience, be in your body, find the joy in that your body, even without you, is growing a whole human and has the capacity to do it with just you, just taking care of yourself. Take care of yourself, own your story, and create your experience. That's my offering to that question.
I love it. I love it. Thank you all for all this good wisdom. We are approaching an hour at 8:30. It is about 8:21. We have one last question on Facebook Live that I want to come to because we need to have this be an intergenerational conversation. I wish that there was a young person here. I'm going to go back to Chicago, Illinois again. Natasha asked the question, how do we build empowerment in our youth to advocate for themselves in the context of medical and healthcare?
Natasha should be asking them questions. Yes.
That's a great question,
Excited.
Natasha. I want to just jump in here for a minute and say, one of the things that, especially based on this discussion, it's really important that our young women begin to understand the history of how Black women have been used, abused, enslaved, made into objects for people of European descent. And it's important that they have spaces like this one, but spaces in person where they can learn about the healthcare system, learn about, and I need Kaylin to come back in, learn about what it is that is happening with their bodies, learn how to make healthy choices, and learn how to talk about them and experience all the things that Kaylin experienced in terms of appreciating their own agency in their, of their bodies. And so Nurturing Justice is really proud to announce that probably starting in the early summer, we are going to be launching a program for young girls, girls ages probably 9 to well, it's going to be intergenerational, starting with girls about age 9 or 10, when they start thinking about and talking about sex and understanding their bodies and what's happening with their bodies. And our point is to educate them about the history of race and racism in America and how it impacts their lives, but also to how to learn about, talk about, and appreciate their bodies. So Kaylin might be new at advocacy and activism, but she, as you can see from this presentation, she is a jewel in God's crown, right? She is a gem because she's got the experience. And so she'll be gathering a group of young women who will then interact with women of senior age and middle age and childbearing age. So we're going to be really diving into this work. So I just urge you to support the work of Nurturing Justice as we start to have these conversations across the board, and especially focusing on our young women so that they can make healthier choices for their bodies, have the knowledge that they need to proceed, and then begin to build connections and tell their stories and feel safe to do so in community, because that's what's so important.
Chris, where can people go to find more information about Nurturing Justice?
Well, they can go to www.nurturingjustice.org, and we can, it's our website has lots of information, ways to contact us. There's lots of information there. And, we try to partner with as many people as possible to, bring this kind of rich work, this kind of rich information to people. It's all about information. And we try to, information is power and community is power. And so we nurture justice in community with one another, and we share information. And it's really important. I know that this is getting really favorable feedback on Facebook, and we'll share the recording. And it's just, people are saying we need a part 2. So Kendra, get ready, get ready, get ready. We're gonna
I
be doing a
got you.
part 2.
I
And
got you.
all of you all get ready.
Absolutely. As Chris said, we are nurturing justice in community. For those of you all that have tapped in on Facebook Live, you are a part of our community. So make sure you go to www.nurturingjustice.org to get more information on this new community that you are now a part of. One of the things that I want you all to leave with from this conversation, from a seed of wisdom that has been planted here, is to protect the life givers. The spirituality of reproductive justice is all about protecting the life givers. Take that with you. Don't just love and like this. Please share it with your community and hashtag it, nurturing justice. Protect the life givers. We look forward to seeing you all for part 2. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all so much.
Yes.
Thank you all so much. Blessings.
Right? I believe that we are off live.
Still recording. Stop the recording.
Okay, there we go.